So I'm Rachel Bevan. I'm Director of Statistics Division for the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, so for ESCAP. So I'm really delighted to be able to welcome you all to today's third ESCAP Asia Pacific Stats Café for 2024. And actually it's also the third in our series of Stats Cafés looking at data governance. So during the ESCAP Committee on Statistics 8th session, which was back in August 2022, we decided to feature data governance in our future work, with an emphasis though really on country experiences and facilitating the provision of technical assistance. So since then, we've been working to develop a data governance framework, and we really benefited from the expert group that we held in Bangkok in September last year. And we used that to develop a data governance framework, which we are now using to produce a series of one-page data governance profiles for different countries. We also produced a short video on the data governance framework. So we put the QR code in the invitation. So hopefully lots of people have been able to watch that. And if you haven't already watched it, please do. That just gives a summary of the data governance framework. But what we're doing in this series of statistics cafes is to actually delve into things in a bit more detail. So what we wanted to do, rather than just holding one stats cafe, which is what we normally do on a topic, we decided to do a series of these sub-regional ones because we were aware it's a big topic, but also when we look at data governance, it's very framed by the context. And so we thought it would be good to do something at the sub-regional level. So we're doing a series of 4 statistics cafes for each of the sub-regions. And I should also note we are not doing one for Southeast Asia because we'd already covered that topic in an earlier meeting with ASEAN countries. So it's not that we've forgotten Southeast Asian countries, and we have included a couple of them in some of these sessions, and we hope that people from those countries are also joining in as participants. So what we're doing then is cover the different sub-regions, and today that means we're on to South and the Southwest region. And we're going to be hearing from India, Nepal, Turkey, as well as from a colleague to the left from the World Bank. And that gives us a real kind of picture of what's going on in the region. But I'm not going to say any more because I want to then hand over to our moderator, who's going to introduce the panel and take us through the session. But what I would ask is please, can participants please do take part. We have got audience polling questions as we go through this. So please do answer those questions. Also make use of the chat function to put in your questions, but also any thoughts and reflections that you have as well. And let me also say that although this is just a stats cafe, we are really seeking to learn lessons as we kind of go through these different sessions, and we're pulling out the key messages, and then we're looking to how we can feed those back into the UN Statistics Commission. Also make use of Friday before the main Statistics Commission this year. There's a whole day session on data governance. So we really are using what you say today to help us to actually feed into that session. So thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, who's going to take us through and introduce everyone. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Rachel, and welcome everyone to this Stats Cafe for South and Southwest Asia. I thank ESCAP for the opportunity to be part of these Stats Cafe discussions around data governance. It's a really important topic, and there's a lot of very interesting work going on, as you'll hear during the discussion. But let's start with a quick introduction of our distinguished and diverse panel here. So we have a powerful set of panelists today. We have all have extensive backgrounds in official statistics. Welcome Toyam, Chief Statistician of Nepal, Rohit, Deputy Director General, MOSPI, India, Thomas, who's joining us as a Senior Economist from the World Bank, and Bilal, Head of Artificial Intelligence and Data Analysis Group with the Turkish Statistical Institute. So a fantastic panel to engage in our discussion today. And the bulk of this cafe will be our panel discussion, but there'll be half an hour at the end for the audience to ask questions of our panel in the chat or in the chat window, or they can raise their hands. And so I'd ask you to think about the questions you want to ask, because it's great to get those questions to the panel. Before we get to the panel discussion, though, I'd like to set the scene with a few opening remarks. Now, Rachel, can you see my screen there?
Yep.
So the data governance landscape is changing, and ESCAP is showing a great initiative in promoting the sharing of experiences and ideas in this dynamic area. And as Rachel said, they've developed ESCAP has developed a framework which will promote shared language and understanding of the key elements of data governance. And Rachel also mentioned an excellent video that's attached to the Stats Café. You'll find the link there. I recommend that you watch it because it'll give you a good overview of the framework that we're using. So let's have a quick think about what we mean by data governance. So the definition that we're working with is on the screen there. So it's really the exercise of authority and control over the management of data with the objective of doing good, enhancing the value of the data assets and mitigating risks. Now, statisticians are, of course, major stakeholders when it comes to the governance of data collected and owned by government, with the Turkish statistical in having a governance framework that gives statisticians the authority they need to both access the data they need to produce good official statistics, but also some influence over the quality of that data so that it's fit for purpose. And we should be very interested, because we're a key stakeholder, in the authority that are given to other agencies when it comes to data governance. So I wanted to just dive down a bit into what I mean by sort of the landscape that we're navigating here. So in the beginning, of course, there was sort of two sets of data. There's the statistical data, the censuses and surveys that statisticians undertake, and then there's the vast administrative data sets that they draw on to also produce statistics. Now, of course, there's also big data and data held by the private sector, but our discussion today is largely focused on this space of government data. And typically, statisticians, the statistician has, under the various statistics acts, authority to exercise some data governance over the data used by the statistical system. And when it comes to the statistician's authority, in fact, the statistician has a lot of authority typically about statistical data, of course, and they've usually got some authority to coordinate and manage the data across the whole national statistical system. But when it comes to administrative data held by other agencies, it gets a little less clear. In most acts now, most statistics acts now, there's a very clear authority for the statistician to at least be able to use the administrative data for statistical purposes. In some cases, there's authority to set standards, typically by providing standard definitions of concepts and classifications. And in some countries, there's a legal obligation for the statistician to be at least consulted or informed if there are changes to the administrative data, because that may have an impact on the statistical system. So those things are reasonably common, but less common is the authority under the Statistics Act to actually integrate data for what I'll call non-statistical but more policy research purposes. Of course, non-statistical statistical purposes isn't that well defined, but some agencies lack that authority. Authority to share with researchers and policy makers in a granular or microdata form. The authority to actually influence the quality of administrative data, and the authority to act as a custodian or a service provider. So these are all roles that are actively being considered at the moment. So in our discussion today, we're going to explore this aspect of who has authority over administrative data and what sort of authority do they have. So that's where we want to go today. I hope that helps provide a little bit of context. And what we're going to do now is move to our panel discussion. And I'm going to share, but first I'm going to put an audience question in the in the chat, and I'm trying to get a little bit better at this audience question stuff. 1 second, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I was sharing that, wasn't I, Rachel, the whole time?
Yeah.
Good. Have I stopped it?
And we can see the poll now in the chat.
Great, great. Oh, things are working. Okay, so we're going to pop up a few of these during our discussion, but our first question is essentially whether your, and you can scroll up to get the question, whether your government has a clear strategic vision and intent for enhanced data governance of government data. Now, if you're here not representing a particular NSO or government, don't worry. We'd love your answer. Just put it down for your country of choice. Okay, so we'd love it. We'd love an answer from everyone. So while you're doing that, I'm going to ask our panel what we're going to do. I'm going to pull up my slides again, and we're going to window. 1 second. I'm going to put up the first of our data governance profiles. I'm having to toggle between a couple of different screens here. Share a window. All right, I think I've done it. Okay, you should be looking at the data governance profile for Nepal. Am I right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Great. Okay, so what I'm going to ask each of the panelists, except for you, Thomas, is to give our audience a little bit of an overview of the situation in their country as per their data governance framework. And I've put it to the panel in terms of an elevator chat. So I think, Bilal, you told me you're on the 18th floor of your building, but it's 24 floors high. So you've got between the 21st floor and the ground floor to tell me some key aspects of your data governance profile. But I'm going to start with Nepal, obviously. So Toyam, can you tell us a bit about the situation in your country, and you can reference your profile? Is there a strong demand for better stewardship of government data? Which institutions are playing a leading role, and what is the role of your statistical agency in this area? Over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you other teams and other members from the India and the Turkey and other who are joining with us. Yes, there is a strong demand for better stewardships. It is also guaranteed through our Foreign Statistical Act 2022. The Act is ensured that only be what use of the statistical purpose, and that individuals' information obtained by the data collector in course of the data collections shall not be used to elsewhere or made available. Vision of the NSO, the establishment of the coordinate, functional, and
typically
our national strategy for the development of the statistical systems. Objectives includes the establishment of the coordination among the three types of government, that is federal, provincial, and local governments. So we have a strong demand for the stewardships. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next profile, which is Turkey, and Bilal, 24 floors, to tell us a bit about your situation.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jonathan, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion, which I'm looking forward to. I'm going to try to give overview of Turkey's data governance profile right now, and I will start first vision and intent policy. Turkey is working hard to create a new digital government strategy in order to go from e-government to digital government. This strategy aims to provide user-focused public services and a government structure based on data. Ongoing corporate architecture and data dictionary initiatives seek to give Digital Turkey a long-term framework by removing barriers to data exchange between public institutions. And as for the institutions, there is this Digital Transformation Office. This is a newly established, relatively newly established institution after the presidency system. It was set up in 2018. And the Digital Transformation Office leads the implementation of digital transformation ecosystem, while Turkish Statistical Institute is vital in collecting, compiling, and disseminating official statistics. Additionally, Information and Communication Technologies Authority focuses on policies and regulations related to data privacy and cybersecurity. And as for the data custody
Already under the Statistics Act to actually.
According to statistics law, Turkstat holds the data stewardship responsibilities for official statistics, which involves setting statistical methods, classifications, and standards. In addition, by coordinating efforts for effective data management across agencies, Digital Transformation Office play a key role in whole of government data stewardship. And as for data sharing, accessibility, and integration, efforts are underway to integrate and share data in sector-specific domains like healthcare, education, and agriculture. Digital Transformation Office is developing National Data Portal, which aims to make anonymized and confidential open government data accessible to citizens. Also, National Data Dictionary Project, again launched by DTO, will establish standards and definitions for data used by public institutions. And in Turkey, sharing of data is governed by a number of laws and regulations that strike a balance between protecting personal privacy and fostering innovation based on data. The law on the protection of personal data establishes principles for collecting, storing, processing, and transferring of personal data. And on the other side, Turkish Criminal Code criminalizes data-related offenses like misuse of personal data. Additionally, there is this ICT authority, and ICT law designates this authority to create ICT policies, including cybersecurity and data privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal. And I'm keen to talk a little bit later about your Digital Transformation Office and the role that it plays. Rohit, if we can move to India now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me thank the organizer for having me here in the Stats Cafe. I must say it's a wonderful, initiative on part of ESCAP to, organize such cafes. Now, I'll come back to the data governance profile for India. Now, as you already put up very rightly that we have a very decentralized system when it comes to data governance. So there are three major players working in this field. There's Niti Aayog, as you're saying, it's a National Institute for Transforming India. It's a body which serves the apex public policy and think tank. Then there's Ministry of Information Technology and Electronics, which deals with the digital environment of the data. And then, of course, there is MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, which looks at the statistical data and issues related to statistics and data. Now, so as I was telling all of you that even the statistical ecosystem of India is decentralized. So the responsibility to collect data is shared between various ministries and Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. And then there are, of course, state governments who do their own bit. Now, coming back to the data management policy and rules, we have National Statistical System, National Statistical Commission, which was established in 2006, and they are in charge of evolving policy priorities and standards in this field. Now, of course, we have a national data sharing accessibility policy, which has been published by Department of Science and Technology, which puts the foundation for how to share data among various stakeholders. And now, as I said, there is a Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, which deals with the digital aspects of the data governance. So far as the custodianship and data stewardship is concerned, it is again decentralized in a sense that the data produced by different ministries. Data produced by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is owned and it's in the custody of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, whereas data produced by different ministries, they are the owners of data and they store the data at their end. Similarly, our office, that Central Statistical Office, which is part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So I don't want to create a confusion over here. I will be speaking for Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and this is just a part of it which deals with the economic data. We have another part which is National Sample Survey Organization, which deals with surveys and samples. So so far as these data are concerned, they are with us. But there are much more data in our official statistical data system, like census data, which is with our Ministry of Home.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask each of the panel
in some other country. So these are the different types of data available with different organizations, and of course, this national data governance policy is a it would really help everyone to bring some sort of a structure into the system. Now then, data sharing, accessibility, and integration. Now, of course, a national data analytics platform, one of the platform mentioned over here. Having said that, I would like to also tell everyone that there are some recent developments on the part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation with respect to this vertical 4, that is data sharing, accessibility, and integration. Recently, we have launched a dedicated portal, we call it Data Catalog, where major data products of the ministry is available. All of you can visit our website, mospi.gov.in, and access this portal. This has features like download, visualization, and preview of the data sets of the major products of the ministry. So it's in the public domain. The idea is to bring everything available to the public. And then there are many other improvements in the website. One of the improvements I would like to say, and again I would request all of you and those who are watching to visit, is creation of a dedicated visualization platform for our data. There are 1200 visualization available. It can also be reached through our website. The website, again I repeat, is mospi.gov.in. So there we can these are the latest development which has happened on our part, other than National Data and Analytics Platform, which is of course there, and it's a wonderful initiative. And then of course there is open data for government, which is part of our open data policy, where all data sets of the government are made available for the users to use. Now, coming back to the data sharing and risk mitigation, of course, Digital Personal Data Protection Act comes at the top, and here it has got the presidential accent, and it will be soon be made operational. Then we have Collection of Statistics Act 2008, which has its provision in terms of protecting the privacy of the personal privacy of the respondent, I'll say. And then, of course, lastly, there is a draft National Data Governance Framework Policy, which is in the process of coming into being, I would say. It's at the draft stage. But yes, this is also an attempt to ensure that the risks comes out when you share the data is mitigated. And, I need to say this much at this point in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohit. And I think you're saying that we probably need to update that column on data sharing, and people will be very interested to go to your website and see your new initiative there around sharing data. So thank you for that. I'm going to stop sharing the profiles at this point, and we've got our answer in from, and I see we're already getting some questions in, which is fantastic, and we'll get back to those shortly. But we've got our answer for the first question, which is that the majority of people, those 18%, or it's now 16% of people disagree, but the majority feel that their government has a strong vision for data governance. Now, we'll put up our second audience question now in the chat, which is, does the NSO of your country have a clear mandate to act as a data steward for data within your NSS? So I think a clear mandate would be that they've got in their legislation the authority to manage the data of data used by the National Statistical System. So we put that question in. Good. Okay. Keep those questions coming in the chat panel too. Now, Thomas, you've been pretty patient. You didn't have a profile to explain to us, but You've been, of course, deeply involved in the modernisation of statistical and data systems in a range of countries. So in developing our one-page profiles, we can see that every country wants to make better use of data to inform policy and service delivery. How do you think government statisticians should respond to this, this vision that government now has to make better use of data? Should they look to play a role beyond stewardship within the national statistical system? Who should they work with and who should they try to bring to the table?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. And it's a pleasure to be here and to talk to so many statisticians. I see some familiar names, so this is good. So first of all, I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that national statistical organizations, they already have a very comprehensive work program, and they shouldn't lose sight of that. That is the most important thing that they do. And in terms of data governance, most NSOs have a lot of experience in data governance and just managing the national statistical system. And whether it's quality assurance, engaging with their users, building digital platforms, this is just a never-ending sort of process. There's always more to do. And I think that should be the first order of business for NSOs. So in terms of data governance, focus on the statistical system to begin with. Now, we all know there's been an explosion in data, digital data through different government processes. And that has opened up new opportunities. And somebody needs to manage that data, whether it's the NSO or maybe it's someone else. I mean, that remains to be seen. I think different countries have been experimenting with different models. In most countries that have successfully sort of managed their data assets outside of statistical information, I think in most cases, it's not been driven by the NSO. But I think in the successful cases, the NSO has played a very active part. There are a few cases I think we can look at where the NSO has actually also been mandated to be the data governance or data steward for the broader data system. One is New Zealand, where the chief statistician is also the chief data officer. Another one, which might be closer to home to this region, is the Philippines, where the chief statistician is also the chief registrar. So if we want to learn from some examples, I think those are two that could be looked at. But I think it's important to keep in mind that being a chief data officer or chief data steward of data outside of the statistical system is a tremendous task, right? It's not something that most statistical offices necessarily have the legal requirement or legal mandate to do today, or the capabilities to do it in terms of IT, technology, even skills. Okay, because it requires new skills within data science, computer science, and so on. When I worked in Statistics Denmark, which is one of the statistical systems in the world that really uses administrative data a lot, it's actually a system that is predicated on registers and transactional databases. And they've been working on this for many, many years. We used to always say, you know, when you design a survey, you get to ask the questions and you collect the answers to those questions. When you have administrative data sources, you have all the answers, but you don't know to which questions. Right? So that's a different way of thinking about producing statistics. So it's really a new field for many statistical organizations to get into. And I would suggest that what I've seen from many countries, that in order to do it, you need to start gradually, step by step, right? I know that in India, they've now started by coming up with a data catalog of government data sets. That's a great first step, because that gives an overview of what is available out there. Secondly, I would suggest sort of a domain approach, where statistical organizations don't try to do everything at once and build sort of the Nordic model of register-based statistical systems. but maybe go by domains, right? So one domain could be business statistics, for instance, to begin with. Many countries are now trying to build statistical business registers, which is sort of the backbone for an integrated system of business statistics. That could be a good first step. Or in other countries, if, say, the land registries are now digital and they're available to be used for statistical purposes, and maybe even integrated with, say, property register, that could be another way of starting
to create ICT policy.
this. Population registers have their own sensitivities and difficulties. One of the panelists mentioned personal data protection legislation, which is now really come into the picture. A lot of countries are really concerned about that. When the Nordic statistical systems of Nordic registers were built, people did not pay as much attention to personal data protection. And as a matter of fact, some of my old colleagues from Statistics Denmark told me recently that if they were trying to build the same registers today for statistical production, maybe they wouldn't be allowed to do so. Yeah. So this is a new reality also that we need to think about. What are some of the other pieces of legislation that are out there that might pose problems or challenges to official statistics? I think in summing up, the statistical organizations have a lot to offer. There are no other agencies in government that really have it as their sole mandate to produce statistics and use data for that purpose. They have a long experience in data governance going back many, many decades. Our colleague here from India, of course, has the Indian statistical system has almost 100 years of experience in producing statistics and applying very strict quality requirements on the production of statistics. So it's a long legacy, it's a long tradition that they bring to the table. And so just to sum it up, I think they have a big role to play, but there are a lot of challenges ahead. Let me stop there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Thomas. That's a lot to unpack, actually, but I think it's consistent with what we've heard in earlier panels. It's a long journey. The context is really key, the extent to which you've got social license. And I think it's a really interesting observation that in some of these countries that are heavily register based, if they were starting tomorrow, they probably couldn't start off that way. Your point that, for many countries, there's a need to just focus on still trying to manage the statistical data. But I think you're also making the point that if things are changing, they need to be at the table and be part of the discussion because they've got a lot to offer. So thank you very much for that. Now we'll move to our third audience question. And I haven't looked at the results of the last one. Let's have a look. So we have pretty strong agreement that, as you would expect, that our NSOs need a mandate to exercise data stewardship over the statistical system. But now we confront this question that Thomas was negotiating around what role should NSOs play in broader data governance across beyond the national statistical system. Thomas, you said in New Zealand you've got now a Data and Statistics Act and a chief statistician who's also the chief data officer. And in Philippines, it's a slightly different arrangement. In Singapore, they also have perhaps it's a bit more sectoral approach. It's not so much sector as in business or society, but there are a couple of other agencies that play key roles. So audience, think about that one. It's a very interesting question, and obviously the answer will be different for each country. Rohit, if I could return to you now, the profile for India, and you talked to us about the decentralized system you have and the roles of the various agencies, but I'm very interested in this national data governance framework policy and the prospect of an Indian data management office. So it sounds like there are some plans afoot there to really put in place some strong governance arrangements. Could you tell us a bit how you see this working with the national statistical system? Will it be part of this governance framework? And to what extent was MOSPI
data governance
thinking around the future ecosystem and the governance arrangements?
Thank you. Okay, so let me just begin with I am also a big fan of putting the definition first. So when Jonathan put the definition of data governance, I was thrilled. I would also like to put the definition of framework first. What a framework is, the framework is a set of foundation guidelines given to various stakeholders to achieve a particular objective. That is a framework. I'm talking in general what a framework we should think about. Now, coming back to data governance framework, which Jonathan talked about, it's in the process of being, coming into being. It's with the objective to transform the management of government data. Now, when we talk about government data, it's it does not contain only the statistical data. It does have various other types of data. So when I'm talking about, the stewardship being done by the MOSPI for the data, then I guess we're talking about the statistical data. Now, statistical data has its own ingredients, and primarily two. The earlier panelist has talked about it. I'm just repeating. It's process and quality, and I don't see, any conflict in it. So these data are concerned, they are with us, managed by MOSPI. So far as the statistical data governance is concerned, and as rightly my previous panelist said, that we have a more than 100 years of experience of managing that, and we're proud of it, and we'll continue to do that. Having said that, due to rapid digitization of the statistical data life cycle, there is a need for governance from digital aspects also. It's the statistical data is no more in this questionnaire, which were pen and paper. It is no more being stored in papers. It's all digitized now. So digital, and let me then come back to the digital data governance. What my understanding of the digital data governance is, digital data governance primarily deal with access, security, privacy, and other, management aspects of when data is stored in a digital format. So when data is in digital databases. So nowadays, all the statistical data is also in a digital format. So I believe having a data governance framework from digital perspective is the need of the hour. So when I understand that it will create a robust environment for access and management of statistical data when collected, stored, and managed in digital, in digital environment, and will ultimately lead to enhancement of trust and value for the data. So what my limited point here is that digital data governance policy, when we're talking about the national data framework, data governance framework, it is being anchored by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So they are looking at the entire government data ecosystem, and statistical data is part of it. Now, almost all the, because of our recent initiative, of digitization of the statistical data life cycle, almost all the data is now digital data, including statistical data. So while we will deal with the statistical processes, statistical quality control, how to collect data from a respondent, these are our thing. But how to store it, what type of privacy enhancement techniques we should use, or what type of security we should use, what type of databases should be there, what type of platform to access the data should be there. This should be this should be common to the government setup. So this national data framework is being made as part of our government approach, which has the philosophy of whole of the government approach. So there are certain things which needs to be common, and this is the common platform or the common governance which is being created. However, if you go through the framework, this is the framework which you're talking about. It's in the draft stage. This framework also talks about that if the domain governance issues needs to be dealt, that will be dealt separately.
Yep.
So I think it's a wonderful initiative. Coming back to your point on, perhaps you asked me about whether the MOSPI was involved in the process or not. I think this. Did you ask me, Jonathan? I think you did refer to that. So I just wanted to tell you that as part of the governance, Indian governance system, we have this established mechanism of interdepartmental consultation when any policy decision is being taken which affects more than one department. So the answer to your question is yes, we have been consulted, and we have also responded to we have given our response to that data framework. It's in the process of being finalized, and we'll come to know about it. Coming back to the data, something is left. I'll be happy to address.
You certainly have. Thank you. And I think it's important to, as you said, the framework is really a way of clarifying who does what. In a way, it doesn't mean that everything's done centrally. And you're saying that the statistical governance, data governance, will still happen as part of your domain. And I guess you're a key stakeholder in what happens more widely, because the better managed the digital data system is, the more benefits you'll derive in terms of access to data and consistency and security and public reliance and trust in confidentiality. So thank you very much for that. Bilal, my next question's for you. As we've seen in our various cafes, there are some interesting differences in approach across the countries, and you also have a relatively new agency, the Digital Transformation Office, that has some responsibility for data stewardship across government. Can you tell us a bit about how it works? Is it the same situation as India, or is it a bit different? And again, were you involved in how that agency was established and what it does? And do you work closely with the Digital Transformation Office?
Thank you for the question. And before I go to the direct answer, according to Jonathan's observations, he listed 3 types of data stewardship approaches in the counter profile document, which was really interesting. In type 1, NSO is the whole of government data steward. In type 2, no single entity holds this role. And in type 3, another part of government is the whole of government data steward, like chief data steward position. When we look at the issue from the perspective of a National Statistical Office, NSOs can have 3 roles in these data stewardship approaches, respectively: lead role, partnership role, or support role. In the lead role, in type 1, NSOs could be given a clear mandate to act as a lead data steward for all government data, similar to the models in like Philippines or in New Zealand or in Ireland. And in partnership role, in type 2, NSOs could collaborate with other agencies on data governance initiatives, contributing their expertise without having complete control. This is the approach in like Argentina, Mexico, Colombia. And in support role, in type 3, NSOs could offer their expertise and support to other agencies on data governance issues, but not have a formal role in decision making. And in case of Turkish Statistical Institute, Turkstat doesn't have a lead role. Turkstat is not a whole of government data steward, but it has a data stewardship functions in relation to only official statistics as required by legislation. On the other side, Turkstat has both partnership and support roles on data governance. Digital Transformation Office, as I said before, was established in 2018, and it plays a central role in whole of government data stewardship in Turkey. DTO leads and coordinates efforts to ensure the effective and efficient management, utilization, and sharing of government data across all agencies. As Turkstat, we work in close cooperation and collaboration with Digital Transformation Office and support them in their data governance efforts. But I should say that there is no centralized body for data stewardship position. So I will talk about it later, because the path forward, we are planning to create a new data government framework, and we plan to have a central body for data stewardship and a data board. And
okay, we might get into that a bit later on, as you say, your plans for the future. But so you don't have. Thank you for referencing that taxonomy, because I think it's a really useful one. You know, with the 3 types of arrangements, and what you're saying is that at the moment you don't have a type 1 agency. It's not Turkstat or the DTO.
Yes,
so you've got.
We are not central. We are not the data stewardship, but I should say that also digital transformation is not the data stewardship. They also coordinate the efforts of public organizations, but we don't have a right now we don't have a central body or central data institutions right now.
Good. Thank you for that.
And
So,
also, if I have time, I want to say a few words on this question about should NSOs play a role in data governance beyond the NSS. Is it
absolutely
possible, Janet? No? Okay. And it's, of course, the decision of whether NSOs should play a role in data governance beyond the NSS will depend on a number of factors, including the specific context of each country, existing data governance framework, and level of trust in the NSO. But there are strong arguments on both sides. While NSO's expertise in data management makes them natural candidates for broader data governance, concerns about conflicting mandates, bureaucracy, and privacy need careful consideration before expanding their role beyond official statistics. Let's say NSOs can have expertise and trust. They can promote data quality and consistency. They can facilitate data sharing and integration. They can support data literacy and public trust. And also they have consistent standards and methodologies. On the other hand, the primary mandate of the NSOs is to produce high quality official statistics. Expanding their role in data governance beyond the NSS could distract them from this core function or create conflicts of interest if they are involved in data used for public decisions. And also, government statisticians may face resource challenges, including the need for additional expertise, technology funding to effectively manage data across the entire government. So limited resources can hinder the successful implementation of a comprehensive data stewardship model. And lastly, there may be some concerns about NSOs having access to and control over a wide range of government data, potentially raising privacy concerns. Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much for that. And your point about some of the risks, if you like, around being a distraction from your core mission, and your point about resourcing, that's the resourcing one's it would be interesting if ESCAP went to some of those countries where they've been given this broader role and found out if they got additional resources to do those roles. Because my understanding is in some countries the stats officers almost won the role by offering to do it for nothing. And I think that could be a path to calamity, actually, because they won't be able to do it well. And maybe they're banking on being able to go back later. It's done well, we'll need more money. So we'll see what happens there. Toyam, you've been very, very patient there in Nepal. You're a chief statistician who's served in a variety of roles across government. So I think you've got a really big picture perspective on this issue. And in your profile, you've got this National Statistics Council, which is intended to be across government influence, if you like, to maintain the quality of among other things, to help maintain the quality of administrative data at both the provincial, local, and federal level. So many countries have in their legislation these statistical councils that bring other stakeholders to the table and can exert some influence across the whole system. Can you tell us a bit about whether this council arrangement has been impactful in your country? Has it led to improvements in data quality and sharing to the benefit of the NSS? It's a long question, I know, but
Never. Yeah. Nepal Statistical Council is chaired by the Vice Chair of the National Planning Commissions, whereas the NPC Chair is the head of the government, that is Honorable Prime Ministers. That is good for us. In Statistical Council, there is 26 members.
okay.
Among the 26 members, there are 7 from the province governments, and other from the line ministry, and the member secretary is the NSO chief, that is me. It is established under the Statistics Act 2022. Council determines the national standards and can give direction to agencies related to data collection, storage, processing, and dissemination. It shows only at coordinating between the interagency. Uniformity, a data collection, access to data to users, and policy related to data and statistics. Councils may approve the plans, policy, and strategies related to data. In the view of the sharings, we have the Privacy Act. Privacy in Nepal is regulated by the Statistical Act also, and also we have the Privacy Act and the individual privacy regulation also is governed from the 2020. No, but knowledge for managerial skills and educated resource is necessary for the data quality and sharing the data also. All three components are not sufficient. Not sufficient is the major obstacle at my observations, I think.
Great, thank you very much. We've got. I should have brought our attention to the results of our last audience question, because we've been on this talking about this issue of having a broader role beyond the national statistical system, and it's interesting that 73% of our respondents strongly agree that the NSO should have a broader role. But of course, we've heard that can come with some distinct challenges, and it doesn't mean that they should try and do the lot. So we're going to, before we move to broader audience questions, wrap up with one final question that Bilal alluded to earlier. I'd like to ask each of you to look into the future, say the next 5 to 10 years, and share with us what you would like to see happen in your country with respect to data governance arrangements. So looking at 5 to 10 years, what would you like the landscape to look like? Is it the same as now, or are there some markedly different situation? And Thomas, please feel free to talk more generally. You can represent planet Earth if you like. What would you like the planet to look like? Or pick a country. So we might start with you, Rohit. How would you like things to look in India?
Okay. It's a very interesting question. When we are struggling to put in place the framework for a whole of the government data, looking into future is something which I thought would be a difficult thing to do. But having said that, when I heard you, I tried looking into the future, with my time machine, and I feel that the biggest challenge would be to balance between the data aspiration and privacy. Our aspiration for data will go manifold. You be statistician, data scientist, I put it this way, the natural evolution of the NSO will be, data science is the natural evolution of NSO. Now, once we start using these data science techniques and tools in a much bigger manner, not what we are doing today, when it is most of them are at the pilot stage and we are trying to work it out whether it is possible to do it in the official statistics or not. These things, how I see it, that in 2-3 years of time, these things will be, will stabilize. And then our requirement of data will increase manifold. We would like to have mobile data. We would like to have, many of the data which at the granular level. And then this concept
Open a new opportunity.
Balance between our data aspiration and privacy will start. So people, as Jonathan was saying, that his colleagues from Denmark were saying that the business register would not have been a possibility. Perhaps data protection law which are in place today had been there, so many years back. So this is the same analogy I want to draw and take you people in the future. We will have strong urge to get data, because we'll have many sophisticated techniques available for us. So on those times, which I refer to as high velocity data, low velocity results will not work.
Yep.
It has to be high velocity results. Now we statisticians will be under pressure to produce those high velocity results, leading to data aspirations on our part, and balancing that data aspiration with the privacy concern would be, I'm again repeating perhaps for the third time, would be the biggest concern I see. Now, the second thing is use of AI. Now, artificial intelligence. I have a very specific case for that. That AI will be used for, say, data analysis, for creating the whole of the knowledge base for the NSO. The access, they will be deciding perhaps who will get the access control, who will not get the access control. I'm not raising a red flag here, but what I'm trying to understand is that these aspects which perhaps the artificial intelligence is going to deal with, in how and in what context, that is something we need to work out together. Again, the regulation will play a bigger part. So ethics while using the artificial intelligence, and security concern or privacy concern while accessing data. I think these two things need to be dealt, going 10 years from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for getting into your time machine. It sounds like you enjoyed it in the end, Rohit.
Yes, I guess so.
And Bilal, you're next. And Rohit mentioned your a topic that's right in your wheelhouse, right? Artificial intelligence. So perhaps you'll touch on that in your vision for what you'd like to see different in 3 to 5 years' time, or 5 to 10 years' time.
Yes, thank you. First, we have also this data governance framework draft right now. The path forward in Turkey is to establish a robust data governance framework which can help build a future where data serves people. Such framework is crucial for ensuring efficient, secure, and responsible data exchange and usage. In Turkey, like in other countries also, data plays an increasingly important role, especially when considering the fact that more and more data is generated across sectors. Data has the potential to improve various sectors, enhance policymaking, and ultimately benefit society. However, data accessibility and interoperability are hindered by silos and lack of clear rules for data sharing in Turkey right now. A data governance framework is needed to address these challenges and guide Turkey's digital transformation. For this purpose, together with other stakeholders, UNDP Turkey, Digital Transformation Office, and Turkstat conducted a self-assessment and proposed a data governance framework for Turkey. And it is this. Next month, this draft framework will be introduced to all stakeholders with a workshop. This framework
They are steward for
first policies and legislation, institutions and mechanisms, people, technology and infrastructure, and partnerships. And key recommendations in this framework include revising personal data protection laws to align with international standards, establishing dedicated data management offices and a national data board, developing multi-year data strategies and action plans,
chief data officer,
investing in capacity building and data literacy programs, building secure and interoperable data infrastructure, and fostering data sharing partnerships within Turkey and internationally. By implementing all of these, we expect improved data accessibility and utilization for better decision-making, increased transparency, accountability, and trust in data management, enhanced innovation and problem-solving across various sectors, and alignment with international data governance norms and best practices. Our path is here. And I will say a few words maybe later about this AI issue. It is also very important.
I hope we get time to get back to that, Bilal. But essentially, I think you're saying that your game plan for the next 5 to 10 years is really already there. You've got a draft framework, and you'd like to see it implemented, and that's not something that's easy, and it takes some time. So probably the next 5 to 10 years will be occupied putting it all in place.
Yes, definitely.
Toyam, what you've got many challenges there in Nepal, and like every country, I think there's still unmet needs within the national statistical system. Now we're being asked to do even more. What would you like to see things look like in 5 to 10 years' time?
Thank you, Jonathan. It is very nice and visionary questions. It is difficult to say what is way forward in next 5 to 10 years. It is depend upon the resources, knowledge gain, and adoption of new knowledge and technologies. But we have the Digital Nepal framework. We are going to formulate the strategic visions for next 5 years. In these areas, we can say that data will be integrated, including the administrative data and MI system, which are in the
The statistical system is a tremendous.
more than 50 areas in different ministry, also in the departments. We can integrate all the MI systems data. And other thing is data system will be prepared at all three tiers of governments in supervision of NSO. Third one, I can say the NSO will have distance system, which is improving system of NDP, national data profiles. If we can capacitate the personnel in comparison to the others NSO, we can do more according to our strategy papers and with the guidelines of the digital Nepal frameworks. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Jonathan, can I chip in?
Legal.
So I just wanted to make a very quick point on, when we talk about such governance framework, we should keep two things in mind. And I think, I got a document where it's rightly written from your side that, we should not adopt this policy of one size fits all. This I would request everyone to consider again, those actually who are working in these multilateral organizations, because two things are there. What type of data governance profile we want will depend on what type of governance framework do we have in our country. By governance framework, I mean executive governance framework, the framework to govern the country. So that will depend on that. So for example, somewhere it would be very easy to get the mobile data. Somewhere it will be impossible to get the mobile data. I'm just trying to cite an example. Second is, what is the priority of the NSOs? The various NSOs have different priorities. So I'll say we must take into account while dealing with, while prescribing the, a generic template for, sensitive issue like data governance. And the second point, I'll say that we in NSOs are now, evolving from being data producer to data user. As Jonathan said, I think my earlier panelist from World Bank said, we are getting now a lot of administrative data. So we are sort of becoming, NSOs are also sort of becoming data users, more of data user. So in that context, I would just want to say that we also need to, as NSOs, we also need to consider, from the perspective of the user, and try to create a framework which is applicable to any other user, and that should be applicable to NSOs also. So, NSO should also be treating the other data of the other source with the same governance mechanism which it would like its own data to be treated. So that is what is something which needs to come somewhere, because otherwise, why I'm saying this is, otherwise getting the excess of data from other source will be impossible. People will not have much of a trust about how the data is going to be treated. So this is one point I wanted to say. And second point is about, I would say that, this digital data framework, we must try to again differentiate between digital data governance framework and statistical data governance framework. There is no contradiction in it. Statistical data governance framework will, at least I can talk for my country, will continue to be dealt by, the MOSPI, the ministry in charge. There is a clear business allocation of business rule. As per that, MOSPI is in charge. But it is just a small, data in, as part of the larger data ecosystem of the government, which has database like Aadhaar, more than 100 crore,
The answers, but you don't know.
I use the word crore, but it's like, in millions, put one more zero into it. So that much of data is there. We use these terminologies, and that type of bigger data, the PAN data, we have around 900 million tax, data is there. These type of data, would be a large set of data which is there in the government, and statistical data which NSO generates is only a part of it. So it is very essential that these digital data, this data, which is large administrative sets of data which are stored in the digital environment, must have a common digital framework to be handled by a specialized agency. Like in our case is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology.
Yeah.
And lastly, lastly, just one quick point that this will and this will also ensure that the value of our data, statistical data, when it is treated as digital asset, improves. So that's the point. Sorry for allowing me another question. I'm thank you very much for that.
That's
I
pleasure,
hope
and it's the benefit of these somewhat interactive formats. So it's good. It's good, and I think what we're seeing in a number of countries is this recognition that there are a number of roles to play, and different agencies are being, in a way, authorised through their governance framework to play that particular role. So you might have an agency that is recognised as a secure custodian, or you might have an agency that is recognised as authorised to integrate sensitive data. So I think the way you're thinking is similar to many countries, and there is no one size fits all. We don't have a single NSS design. I'm fascinated by the variations on that, and we should be very wary of having a single data governance design. Thomas, just quickly, representing Planet Earth, what would you like the world to look like in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I would like governments to realize that successful data projects require collaboration, right? So every agency has something to contribute. You need the data scientists, the ministries of technology and IT. You need the statisticians, and you need the domain experts in the 9 ministries for this to be a success. Right now, in many countries, we see that these ministries and departments still work in silos. Okay, so the key question is, how do we break those silos? I would like to see us break those silos in the next 5 to 10 years. It really bothers me when, for instance, and not to pick on ministries of technology or IT, but sometimes, they will launch a big open data platform, right? And there's just a bunch of data sets put out there, published, with no metadata, with no quality control, no data curation. Nobody knows who the users are, or if there are any user needs, right? And it's put out there, it's never updated again. And we know from the launch and maybe 5 years later that the usage of that data just declines. And so we need the statisticians for their expertise in data curation, in understanding what users need, the metadata, the quality controls. And we also need the domain experts to tell us what is it actually that they need, what kind of information they need for their policies and planning. And so these different players, they need to work together. And I'd like to see that in the next 5 to 10 years, that we do more of that. Great.
Thank you very much for that. And although, of course, the challenge is that silos are quite efficient structures for some activities, aren't they? And we all tend to go back into our silo when we're forced to. And there's fascinating tensions between, if you look at data quality, the needs of a statistician versus an administrator. So your message is we need to look up out of our silos, though, and manage government as a whole of data asset collaboratively. Now, before we start to harvest some of the questions that have been put up, we'll post another question to the audience for people. This one's a word cloud question, and it's just to give 1 or 2 words, if you could, the biggest risk to increasing sharing and integration of government data. So if you can put your answer in there. And while people are doing that, Bilal, could we get you just quickly, I don't know if you can do this quickly, but artificial intelligence, everyone's wondering what its application will be in the field of official statistics. What do you think some of the likely applications are when it comes to integrating survey and administrative data? Because it could be very powerful, yes? Will it be a tool for unlocking new insights while protecting confidentiality?
Thank you for the question. Here is in Turkey, there is a specific unit, artificial intelligence and data analysis group, and I'm the head of this group. And this group's responsibility is to maintain the big data environment, and also the machine learning works, and data governance works, and also business intelligence. So unlocking the power of technology, innovation, and data science for official statistics represents a paradigm shift in how we collect, process, and interpret data here in Turkey. And by benefiting the latest advancement in machine learning and also maybe I should say artificial intelligence and data processing techniques, here in Turkstat, we try to revolutionize the accuracy, speed, and depth of our statistical insights. Turkstat, I comfortably say that specialized in leveraging artificial intelligence and advanced data analysis techniques to extract meaningful insights from large and complex data sets. Right now, for example, we are actively using web scraping and scanner data for consumer price statistics and also job openings. Prices of white goods, cars, furniture, bus and flight tickets, clothing, and job postings from career websites are collected via web scraping, and these collected prices are used in the calculation of consumer price indexes, and job advertisements are also used in labor force statistics. And we predict COICOP classification codes for prices and ISCO 08 codes for the job openings from the to the data that we acquired from web scraping data. And we do it automatically by using machine learning algorithms. And also, moreover, Turkstat works on predicting CPA codes for e-invoices. I mean, we try to predict classification of products by activity codes to the e-invoices product names.
Bilal, I'm going to cut you off there. It sounds like it's going to do a lot, right? I think we'll need another Stats Cafe on that topic of the application of AI to statistical processes. But you've given us just a glimpse into the many roles it might play. And you've also, of course, jumped straight now to the drawing of the use of non-government data in the statistical system. And here we are talking about data governance within government. I would hope that in 10 years' time, where we've worked out how to collaborate with the private sector around using its data for official statistics. So now Thomas is sneaking away, but Rachel, I've got a question for you. I posted up in the chat. It came in the chat question there. How does this profile that ESCAP's developed differ from previous familiar terminologies like data ecosystems and statistical systems?
Thank you. So in terms of these data governance profiles, there's something a little bit different to kind of some of those terminologies you put there. So data ecosystem kind of just refers to perhaps what the institutions are. With this data governance profiles, we are really trying to look at this kind of specific area around, what's the role of the NSO? So what's the role of the National Statistics Office really within this? How are they kind of leading this role in terms of governing data? How are they working with others? Is there another agency involved? So it's much more kind of, I suppose, fluid in a way than the data ecosystem. So it's looking more at the rules, the institutions, the policies, who are the kind of main players, as we've heard already, and how is it all kind of, linking up. And the reason that we were really developing these as well was because very much we're seeing that actually everyone does things differently, as we've heard as well today. Countries have very different contexts, but also we have very different understandings of some of this terminology. So we've really been trying to kind of actually help to try and tease out what to actually mean by those different roles. Data, what is a data custodian versus a data steward? What's the role in the National Statistics Office versus, what's the role of perhaps these other parts of government, really. And the reason as well for having one-page data governance profiles is really to help to look at, what are these different options that countries might have, and to help in terms of, if you're just looking, as we heard Turkey kind of looking at what they're doing next, this is kind of one way to perhaps highlight that this is what some other countries are doing as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And our hope, of course, is that these profiles are a nice, efficient way of sharing knowledge about how things are evolving in different countries, so people can ask each other sensible questions and not be too confused by the answers. Rohit, I've plucked out this next question for you. We talk about NSOs having a role around managing data in the statistical system, but if they're using a lot of administrative data, you mentioned high velocity data, trying to get high velocity insights out of it. How do you manage the quality of that data for statistical purposes? Because the owner and originator of the data may or may not be interested in your needs as the statistician.
It's a very good question. I must say that, because whenever things are to be shared between two people, who are different, producer and users are different, these questions come up. Now we have been facing this question as NSS. Now we'll have to find answer for it as well. So Howard, coming back to your question, first thing first, we need to have this data governance framework in place before we start even thinking of accessing data, because when different users and different producers are there has to be a linking framework available which is binding on both parties. If this doesn't happen, then it becomes there is every chance that the structures will be lost in the transit, I'll say. So first we need to be this data governance mechanism framework, or whatever word we use for it, is a must before these large data sets become quality statistical databases, if I may use that terminology, but there can be a different term for that as well. So that is the first thing. So once there is a certain benchmark which is applicable to everyone, that would ensure that we are starting with a settled base. We all know that these things have been taken care of by the producer of the data. So this is point number one. You cannot just swim in the oceans thinking that without understanding that what would be the depth. We need to understand that what is the basic quality which is being maintained, and that's the only way to do that is to have a governance framework, data governance framework in place. For example, that I should be sure that the data format being used by each of the producer is not likely to vary. I'm trying to put it, I understand I'm trying to oversimplify it, but I'm just trying to make a point that DD, MM, YY, YY is the data format being used by everyone. I need not check that column for the correctness of the data when I'm going to extract. The second point is, again, very important point, is perhaps my friend from Turkey referred to, is access of the data. So our data governance framework talk about a common data access platform. We just cannot, so this is another prerequisite we should have. Each of the databases should have APIs with it. There should be a common access platform for it. There should be some basic checks which has to happen for, which needs to be there, and every producer of the data needs to maintain that. Once these things are there, then only we can think of, creating these huge administrative databases, as meaningful statistical database. And then, of course, when it comes to us, then as my friend from World Bank rightly pointed out, then we need to find out that all the answers are there, but what are the questions they are answering to? That we need to find out subsequently. But before that, data preparation at the end of the user and how to access those data. If these two questions can be solved, I think most of the users are following, good practices. So then those data would be available to NSOs for you to be used as a statistical database. That's what, I can think of and I shared.
Thank you. I think one of the challenges going forward, and I guess it's always been a challenge, is the ongoing supply of administrative data, because as government services change, perhaps driven by changes to technology and society, administrative sources come and go. In Australia, our arrival and departure cards, which drove a lot of our population statistics, were no longer needed. So I think, coming back to Thomas's point, a healthy collaboration is required where people recognise that the data that they're custodians of has other purposes than their own administrative purpose, and they need to work with others around its evolution and even its ultimately its cessation. I've pulled up another question there, and Toyam, I thought it'd be funny to get you to answer a question from Nepal, but I think the question, but Thomas might want to weigh in on this one too, and I think it's about how do you influence government around making data governance a priority? So interested in your thoughts on that. I think I've read that question right. It's sort of how, and I'll give a little clue what we've heard from some other cafes, which is show them the benefits. You know, governments are really interested if you can show them that bringing some data together delivers insights that are going to lead to better services or better policy. So I couldn't resist throwing that in myself, but Toyam and then Thomas.
Okay, thank you. I think this question is what the government do. Government do for the data management systems. I think data is data for development. One thing, data for information, and data for evidence. For that purpose, every data in the consolidated in the one forms and integrated systems, and data security and other things, and data openness is the another things. All the requirement is fulfilled by the government system according to the law, the policies, and other resource availability. I think that is the major things to the governments to be better data management systems.
Is being anchored by Ministry.
Thank you, Thomas.
Well, I think you're exactly right that we need to showcase some uses of this data and how governments can benefit. I think India, there's a very good example in the Aadhaar, right? It's been a tremendous success. Now people have realized how useful it is, how it makes their lives easier. It's a lot of skepticism in the beginning, but I think most people are now on board with that, and that's generated a lot of interest in improving data systems in India. Another example from India is how some states have started to integrate data on social schemes. Okay, they call it direct beneficiaries. So there's a lot of social schemes dispersing money to people. But in the past, these were all siloed. So the governments actually didn't know who the beneficiaries were.
So privacy enhancement techniques.
Integrating that data, and they realized that they can actually avoid a lot of wastage and duplication of social transfers. And so that is something that really gets the attention, of course, of finance secretaries. If you can put a dollar value or rupee value in this case on the use of data and data integration. So we need more of those use cases to really showcase to the policymakers the value of data. And I think that's not just from developing countries, that's also from examples from Europe and North America, that if you cannot showcase real valuable use cases, then you're not going to get far. So that's what we need to do. We need to think about that.
Yeah, it's probably not the strong suit of official statisticians, actually, this marketing of value propositions, but it's something we've all got to get better at. There's also, I've posted a link to the tremendous report on the ESCAP website about Nepal's data integration project, which I think is another good way to get the interest of government, is to do something practical. In this case, let's bring together data that might inform a number of important policy issues and find out what the real obstacles and challenges are. And I thought this was a beautiful example of such a project where you get a number of people around the table, and it clearly establishes that yes, there are some data quality issues. Yes, there are some concerns about privacy and confidentiality. How are we going to, and then they have to work out how to manage it. So put the problems on the table. Good. All right. Now I need another question. I know. While I'm thinking of another question, thank you for that. We'll put up our final word cloud question if we could in the chat. And this will be the first cafe where we've managed to put up all the questions, I think, Rachel, or at least I've remembered them. So this last word cloud is, what is the biggest obstacle to effective data governance of government data? If you can put your thoughts around that. And I'm looking for one last question. I'm scrolling up.
wonderful initiative. Coming back to your point.
Don't forget to fill in your word cloud, and we want everyone to submit a response. So I've got I guess a final question, and Thomas, I'll direct it.
Whether the MOSPI was involved in the.
I'm sure some others might want to weigh in, but we've got this. We now encourage a lot of countries to develop national statistical development strategies, NSDS. And now in New Zealand we've got a Statistics and Data Act, and we've got some countries where they're embracing this broader role. What does that mean for our strategic planning in the future? Is this something we're going to have to factor into those NSDS developments? Is some consideration around where we want to sit in that taxonomy in terms of how we play in the data ecosystem? Or are we better off for many of these countries that are still trying to get their NSS established and functioning well? Are we better off not distracting them?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the context. I think countries that are at sort of a lower level of development, they might not want to take on the whole government data system at once. They might want to, try to work on the foundations of the statistical system. But then countries that are more mature, maybe they want to take on more. I think in NSDS for a long time, we've been talking about using administrative data for statistical purposes. And I think we need to become more concrete on what we actually mean by that. It's not always very clear. And I think if countries have some experience in using administrative data, for instance, they might get access to aggregates from 9 ministries and departments. Maybe they start looking at taking it one step further, and if the legislation allows, then get access to the microdata and see if they can integrate that data and produce statistics on that basis. So to me, it's sort of a progression, not one size fits all. It really depends on where the starting point is and what the legal environment is, what the capacities are, the institutional frameworks, and so on.
Yeah. I think, Rohit, you mentioned that, some NSOs have these other functions. I think you mentioned civil registration. I know in Mexico they do geospatial work. So there are these functions that sort of sit quite comfortably alongside official statistics. And I've often debated in my own mind, whether this is sensible, but of course it depends on the context, and sometimes they can bring useful economies of scale and important skills together. So maybe this data governance role is broader data governance roles, like providing privacy preserving access to large data. Maybe they're just nice companions that sit alongside for some agencies and for others not. So I wonder, Thomas, if in some of these some smaller countries there might actually be merits in putting some other functions together with them to give them a bit more in the way of a resource base and scale. Rohit, do you have a view on that?
Yes.
And then we'll have to wrap up.
Okay, so just a very quick thought on that. I guess using administrative data is the need of the hour. One cannot now no longer avoid that. However, having said that, we need to find a platform where we have confidence about the usability of that data. As Thomas said, when he was talking about it, that we should be sure what type of aggregates can we get. Is it complete? So recently I was in a conference there, somebody was presenting a data science thing, and based on a 60,000 data sets, they were trying to tell everything about the entire country. Now, being a statistician, no, I'm not saying there's anything bad in it. High velocity data, high velocity result is the need of the hour. But what I'm saying, as a statistician, as a methodologist, I'll need some more time to work on that data.
Yep.
And so that's one point. So I'm saying that we need to find a method which will make, which will enhance availability of the, administrative data, improve its acceptability, and then the adaptability will entail. So what I'm trying to say that first of all, we need to find a method and use for these statistic, administrative data in our statistical ecosystem, because we are too used to our sample and sample surveys and things like those. Even in our methodology of economic statistics, the people need to sit and apply their mind that what is going to, what is going to replace what.
Various cafes there. Some interesting.
Believe me, it's not easy. ASI, we have a lot of data on industrial statistics, which is coming from survey as well as coming from administrative data. So need of the hour to people to sit, methodologies to be finalized, and then, going forward, I see a lot of use for the administrative data.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rohit. We start on time, and I'm compelled to help us end on time, but that was a great way to finish. And indeed, it sort of underlines the poll result we've got around the biggest risks, and someone's put misuse. Well, the majority of people have put misuse of data, which can easily happen without the right methodologies. So, Rachel, can I throw to you to thank and wrap up? And thanks, panel, for your interaction and patience.
Thank you so much. So this is our third cafe in a row on data governance, but it's always interesting that we have very different issues discussed, although the kind of topic's the same, we see really different emphasis. So today it's been really interesting to hear more about that role that an NSO should be taking in terms of the whole.
Is India, or is it a bit different?
Our country wants to actually manage data. But we heard the very useful kind of typology around that role for an NSO, whether or not they want to take that leadership role, more of a partnership role, or more of a supporting role. But also we really saw as well that NSOs have got a lot to offer in this area. Clearly NSOs have, sometimes, nearly 100 years of experience in managing data. But even despite that, they need to think quite carefully about that role that they want to take. Because, these are big areas kind of moving into managing data from all kinds of, not just administrative data, but big data. And that can put a huge pressure on an NSO. So just being mindful as well, actually an NSO is thinking about that role, is being very careful almost not to overstretch their role, because that could also really have a detrimental effect on the rest of their work if it undermines the many years that they've spent kind of building up that trust in good quality statistics. But I think we've also heard quite a lot today as well about managing data risks and the importance of doing that again, because it can undermine things. But I think one of the other messages, which is similar to what we've heard before, is around it does take time. And that means as well that often we have to take these kind of small but incremental steps to actually move forward. So it's not always about having a great big new data governance framework. Sometimes it can actually be about taking these small steps as we all go towards developing these better data governance systems. But I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing, and really interesting to hear the very different experiences. Thank you to our moderator as well for managing so well. And to say we have another Stats Cafe, our last of the 4, will be next week. It starts at 2 p.m. next Monday. We will send around the details. So please do join us. But also, if you haven't had a chance to kind of join the previous Stats Cafes, they've all been recorded. We've got links to them, and we've also tried to summarise the key messages. But thank you so much to panelists, but also to participants as well. And thank you for your active engagement, because we've got lots of questions there, but also heard a lot in terms of different views in the polling. So thank you so much, everyone. I may see lots of you next week.